Victor Davis Hanson just dropped a truth bomb that shatters everything the media wants you to believe about Trump's so-called revenge tour. The left is panicking, the establishment is trembling, and the swamp is finally being drained. But is this really about vengeance, or is Trump playing a much bigger game?
Republican on the committee who did not vote to impeach Donald Trump or who had a political future. If he takes the third alternative, and that's what you hinted at, and he keeps dwelling on the injustices that were done to him, he's kind of like a Sophoclean Ajax, where the entire play is about all the wrongs that people did to Ajax, all of which were legitimate criticism. Everything he says has legitimate grounds.
When it comes to presidential appointments, there's a glaring double standard that plays out in the media and among political commentators. Every president replaces key figures in the government with people who align with their vision, yet when Trump does it, it's labeled as authoritarian. Meanwhile, Biden and Obama made sweeping changes to their administrations, but no one batted an eye.
We've got to have a border that's secure. Joe Biden blew up immigration law. It doesn't exist in America on the southern border. Nobody's talking about gasoline prices and their way of thinking, if they've gone up $3 and they went down 50 cents, that's a cut, but they're still much higher and people know that. Inflation went from 9 point.
Obama had no problem clearing house when he took office. He fired dozens of officials across different agencies, including military officers, political appointees, and advisory board members. Reports indicate that nearly 200 high-ranking military officials were dismissed throughout his presidency, reshaping the command structure to fit his policies. Biden followed suit the moment he stepped into the White House. One of his first moves was firing Peter Robb, the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, even though the position is supposed to remain independent across administrations. That was an unprecedented decision, but instead of being called a dictator, the media framed it as Biden restoring order and bringing in his team. Meanwhile, when Trump made similar decisions, the narrative flipped. Every dismissal was painted as an attack on democracy. His decision to fire inspectors general across various agencies was met with hysteria, with headlines claiming that he was gutting oversight mechanisms. When he restructured the Voice of America agency, it was called an attempt to turn an independent news outlet into his propaganda machine. This kind of selective outrage is impossible to ignore. When a Democratic president replaces people, it's just normal governance. But when Trump does it, it's somehow a constitutional crisis.
To dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all, and corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors.
Trump learned a valuable lesson from his first term. He realized that Washington is filled with people who aren't just indifferent to his presidency, but actively working against it. This time around, he isn't making the same mistake. Instead of hiring bureaucrats who are part of the system, he's bringing in people who have fought against it. His picks aren't just political allies, they're individuals who have been personally targeted by the deep state and know exactly how corrupt the system is. Take Kash Patel, for example. During the Russia collusion hoax, he played a major role in exposing the lies that were being pushed to take down Trump. Because of this, he became a prime target of the media and intelligence community. They smeared him, accused him of leaking classified information, and tried to destroy his credibility. Now Trump wants him in charge of the FBI, an institution that went after him with baseless investigations. That's not about revenge. It's about putting someone in charge who understands how corrupt the system has become and wants to fix it.
To be the leader of the Republican Party and to look ahead and not to do what he did in 2020 when he fixated on the election. He let the Georgia races, the 2 Senate races, sort of, he basically told his supporters the vote won't be valid. And then the independents, he seemed to be distracted.
Another example is Tulsi Gabbard. As a former Democratic congresswoman, she was one of the few politicians willing to speak out against the corruption in her party. She openly criticized Kamala Harris during the 2020 Democratic primaries, and for that, she was smeared and even placed on a terrorist watch list. The idea that a sitting member of Congress could be treated that way just for challenging the establishment is insane, but it makes her the perfect candidate for a key intelligence role because she understands firsthand how power is abused in Washington. Then there's Pete Hegseth, a former military officer and journalist who has been calling out government incompetence for years. He has exposed the failures of the Department of Veterans Affairs, criticized the Pentagon's bureaucratic inefficiencies, and advocated for real reforms. Unlike the career politicians who use government jobs as a stepping stone, he wants to clean up the mess. That's why Trump is bringing in people like him instead of the usual swamp creatures.
The mayor of New York City is all part of what she called the Trump revenge tour.
The Trump administration has said is already trying to use the legal jeopardy facing our mayor as leverage to squeeze and punish our city. The president's already trying to weaken our public transit system and undermine our state sovereignty. I call it the Trump revenge tour.
Many in the media have labeled Trump's recent actions as a revenge tour, suggesting he's on a personal vendetta against those who opposed him. This narrative paints Trump as a leader more interested in settling scores than governing effectively. Headlines scream about his supposed retribution plans, creating a perception that his primary goal is to punish adversaries. However, this perspective overlooks a crucial point. Trump's actions are less about personal revenge and more about implementing systemic reforms. Throughout his first term, he encountered significant resistance from entrenched bureaucrats and officials who were more aligned with the establishment than with his administration's goals. This resistance often hampered policy implementations and led to internal conflicts. Recognizing this, Trump's current approach aims to restructure the bureaucracy to ensure it aligns more closely with the elected administration's objectives, thereby enhancing governmental efficiency and responsiveness. Historically, leaders have undertaken significant bureaucratic overhauls to align governmental structures with their visions. For instance, during the early 20th century, Max Weber observed that bureaucracies, while essential for organization, could become inefficient and resistant to change. Leaders like Napoleon Bonaparte restructured administrative systems to centralize authority and improve efficiency, especially after recognizing that existing structures were inadequate for their expansive goals. Similarly, Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal era brought about substantial changes in the U.S. federal bureaucracy to address the challenges of the Great Depression, illustrating that systemic overhauls are sometimes necessary to adapt to new realities. During his first term, Trump faced notable pushback from the swamp. This internal resistance manifested in various ways, from leaks to the press to outright refusals to implement certain policies. Such actions not only hindered the administration's agenda, but also highlighted the challenges presidents can face when entrenched bureaucratic elements oppose change. In response to these challenges, Trump's current approach emphasizes appointing individuals who are both loyal to his vision and committed to reforming the bureaucracy. By placing trusted allies in key positions, he aims to ensure that the executive branch operates in harmony with the administration's objectives, reducing internal friction. This strategy underscores the importance of having an executive branch that is both loyal and responsive to the directives of the elected president, ensuring that the will of the electorate is effectively translated into governance. This approach isn't unique to Trump. Historically, presidents have sought to align the bureaucracy with their policy goals. For instance, Franklin D. Roosevelt expanded the federal bureaucracy during the New Deal to implement his programs effectively. Similarly, other leaders have restructured administrative bodies to ensure smoother execution of their agendas, recognizing that a cooperative bureaucracy is crucial for effective governance.
In social media posting announcing his intent to veto a New York City law, overrule it that is, that has successfully reduced traffic jams in New York City, the most local of issues. And it is worth pausing for a moment to consider all those people who just repeatedly told you last year that Joe Biden was just too old to be president. Joe Biden's brain just wasn't working sharply enough to be president.
Mainstream media outlets have played a significant role in shaping public perception of Trump's recent appointments and policy decisions. By framing these actions as steps toward authoritarianism, the media has fueled a narrative that instills fear and distrust among the populace. Articles and opinion pieces often draw parallels between Trump's governance style and that of authoritarian regimes, suggesting that his actions pose a threat to democratic institutions. These comparisons, however, can be seen as exaggerated and lacking nuance. Equating administrative restructuring or the dismissal of certain officials with the rise of authoritarianism overlooks the complexities of governance and the necessity for leaders to have teams that align with their policy objectives. Such narratives may serve to sensationalize events, capturing public attention but potentially distorting the reality of the situation. The establishment's apprehension toward Trump's actions likely stems from a fear of genuine change that could disrupt long-standing power structures. By challenging entrenched systems and proposing significant reforms, Trump threatens the status quo, prompting resistance from those who benefit from existing arrangements. The media, often intertwined with these establishment interests, may amplify negative portrayals to maintain the current balance of power and discourage transformative initiatives. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for the public to critically assess the information presented to them. Recognizing potential biases and motivations behind media narratives allows for a more informed and balanced perspective on political developments.
It's the entire swamp that we're flushing out because if Donald Trump wins the election, that is exactly what he says he's going to do. Trump was in Wisconsin on Saturday, and during his speech, he detailed 9 steps that he's going to take to drain the swamp when he gets into office, saying we are a failing nation now, but there is still time to change it.
Trump's overarching objective with his current strategy is to drain the swamp, a metaphor for eliminating corruption and inefficiency within the federal government. By appointing individuals who challenge entrenched systems and advocate for accountability, he aims to initiate a cultural shift within the bureaucracy. This approach seeks not only to address immediate issues, but also to implement long-term institutional reforms that promote transparency and responsiveness. The impact of appointing reform-minded individuals can be profound. These appointees, often with first-hand experience of the system's shortcomings, bring valuable insights and a commitment to change. Their presence can catalyze internal reforms, inspire other officials to adopt a more accountable mindset, and ultimately lead to a more efficient government that better serves its citizens. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.